parents and dear families, welcome to our award ceremony. It is, as always, our pleasure and honor to award, but these particularly brilliant and dedicated students with the certificates that will prove their achievements. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Bojana Golubovic. I come from Serbia, Europe, where I have been teaching logic, philosophy, and debate for 15 years now. This is my fifth year with Capital Debate, and Capital Debate became my American family. So I would like to invite Josh to present himself and share his feedback on the past week.
Hello, my name is Josh, and I'm a sophomore in college right now. And my debate experience started about 5 years ago when I was in eighth grade. And I actually started it with Capital, doing Capital camps. And then I continued my experience by joining the Capital Debate travel team. And that was an amazing experience where I got to debate in many competitive leagues and do a lot of really cool things in my high school experience. It also helped me start my high school team in Baltimore, Maryland. So that was really an amazing experience also. And I just want to thank you for letting me work with your kids over the past week. It's been an amazing experience. And I've probably learned just as much from them as they have learned from me. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Josh. So before I call each student, I would like to express, as Josh did, our gratitude for trusting us with your children. Josh and I made sure to cover all the lessons planned for Debate 201 session, which means that your children have learned how to write an opening speech, refutation speech, and finally a closing speech. But there was one part of debate that they found to be, let's say, the trickiest one, and that's the cross-examination. The cross-examination was on their list of constructive feedbacks they gave to themselves and each other. And you will see how much they improved, especially in this field. So, apart from these lessons, what Josh and I truly believe in and what we really worked on is not only improving in these fields, but also in boosting their cooperation, creative, critical thinking, and confidence, which are the skills much needed for the future careers and in everyday life. Dear parents, please welcome the new generation of leaders and change makers. They are strongly advocating for the better world, and we need to listen to their voices. So, I would like to greet our first student. Sahil Shah. Great job, Sahil. So, as I mentioned previously, Sahil started session one as a student who gave constructive feedback to himself by saying that he needs to improve in public speaking skills. Yesterday, he said that the only thing he needs to improve is a refutation speech, but you'll see how he improved that in only one day. Thank you, Sahil. It was a pleasure and honor. Our next student is Kevin Kao. Kevin, great job. Congratulations. So, just the same as Sahil, Kevin also shared the same impression and the reason why he joined this camp. So during session one, he said that he needed to boost his public speaking skills. By the end of session two, he shared the same constructive feedback as Sahil, and he said, I need to work more on my refutation. But you'll see how good that refutation is. Great job, Kevin. It was a pleasure. Our next student to receive a certificate is Juhi Desai. Great job, Juhi. So Juhi joined our team during session two, and we're so pleased and honored to have her on our team. So what Juhi said is that she improved her nonverbal communication during session one and session two, and that she needs to work on the memorizing her speech. And yesterday she said, oh my God, I will never succeed in that. But listen to her now. Great job, Juhi. We are so proud of you. Our next student is Liam Lobel. Liam joined our session two, And we are so proud to have him on this team. Great job, Liam. So Liam expressed that he needs to work more on his hand gestures, but he also notified that his research skills have and vocal variety improved a lot. And you will see the results of that. Great job. Moving on to our next student. So the next one to receive a certificate is Leah Schmidt. Great job, Leah. It is our pleasure and honor to host you in session 2. So this is first session for Leah in Capital Debate virtual camps, and she coped as she's our regular student, like she's been with us for 5 weeks so far. What Leah said at the beginning is that she needs to improve her confidence. Oh my God, you will see how confident she is now. Great job, Leah. Moving on to our next students to receive a certificate. Alison Tay. Alison, great job. We are so proud to have Alison on our team. When she joined session 2, she said that she needs to work more on her public speaking skills, but she looks so confident and she will persuade you in her points. Great job, Alison. We are so proud of you. Our next student to receive a certificate is Alex Wu. Alex Wu is unfortunately not with us, but let's give kudos to Alex. What Alex shared at the beginning is that his research skills are not as good as he wants them to be. But unfortunately, since he is not with us today, Josh will take place. But the speeches that Josh will present are actually the speeches written by Alex, and you will see how much he improved in this field. Great job, Alex. Moving on to our next student. Arsh Raja. Great job, Arsh. So, at the beginning of session 1, Arsh said that he wants to improve in public speaking skills, both verbal and nonverbal, and his, let's say, biggest goal would be not to use filler words anymore. And there are no filler words during session 2. And as I've shared with all of them, I started using them. So, Arsh, thank you for helping me with that self reflection. Other than that, what Arsh also mentioned is that he needs to work on cross-examination, and you will see how he improved in just one day. Great job, Arsh. We are so proud of you.
And congratulations to Arsh on also winning first place in our team building activities, even though he missed actually one of the sessions for because of a conflict. Nice job on that.
Great job. Oh, Josh,
Yeah.
do you have any information about who will be our second and third place?
Yes, our second place was Kevin Cow. He also missed a session, or no, I think our third place was
Kevin?
it was Kevin in third. I actually don't have the score in front of me. I was only prepared.
Kevin, you're our hero.
But yes, Kevin, and then I think it was Allison. Allison came in second
Yes,
and third.
Allison, great job. Um, so moving on to our next slide. So what we missed to do this morning, guys, but it's very important for us, is to fill out the student survey. So you see the link here. We would highly appreciate if you could write down the link and take some time during this day to fill the link out, to fill the questionnaire out, because what we need is a feedback. We've spent 7 days, sorry, we spent this week giving feedbacks to each other, positive and constructive. And guys, you've learned how much constructive feedback can improve all of us. And this goes for Josh and me as well. We need to improve every week in order for you to grow. So can you please take some time during this day and fill out this survey? Parents, this goes for you as well. We would like to know what are our fields of improvement and where we were good in order to keep that way and improve in other fields. Thank you very much. Moving on to our next slide, where we would like to share that apart from debate 201 and debate 101, where most of your children have already participated, we offer during this summer a legal communication camp, business communication, interpersonal communication, and STEM communication camp. So, as the name says, those are the camps where students improve in these specific fields. If they want to pursue a law career, then legal communication would be their favorite program. Now, if they want to improve more in debate itself, then debate 301 would be the best camp for them. Why? Because during debate, public speaking and debate 101, they learned how to write an opening or so-called persuasive speech and how to present. During debate 201, half of them actually wrote an opening speech as well on this topic, and all of them wrote refutation speech and closing speech, and they learned the skills of cross-examination. With debate 301, they write one more speech, which would be a so-called rebuttal or defense speech, where they actually defend their case from the attack of their opponents. And debate 301 actually starts with a kind of a competition among the members of this group. Debate 401 is the highest level, so the most advanced level we can offer during virtual camps, and this is the level where they compete. Now, Club League is something that will happen throughout the year. So if your children don't have debate camps at their schools and they found some great friends here during debate 201, please contact us because we would gladly offer them to be a team and participate in the competitions that we organize. So today only, this is the coupon code for any of the programs you would like your children to enroll. And if you enroll today, then you will get $50 off next camp. If you have any further questions regarding the programs, please send us an email. This is our email address, or just call us by using this number. Thank you, Josh. Moving on to our next slide. Well, our next slide says that we are all set and ready for our first debate. And the first debaters to explain two different positions on one topic. And the topic is the government regulations of social media companies do more good than harm. So Liam will debate from the perspective of a pro debater by saying that it is the true, and Alison will debate from the position of con debater by explaining that those regulations will actually do more harm than good. So I would like to invite all of our students to get out of this panel and leave some space for our great debaters, Liam and Alison. So, Liam and Alison, you are all set to start. So, I would like to invite Liam, our pro speaker, to share his opening speech. Liam, you may start.
Often, we find ourselves glued to our device on social media for hours at a time. While this may seem harmless at first, every single move you make on social media can be used for malicious purposes. And a lot of this is due to the fact that social media companies are regulating themselves. Time has shown again that social media companies are incapable of regulating themselves, and so the government should be the ones to step in and regulate these massive platforms. Government regulation of social media will do more good than harm for these reasons: spreading misinformation, violating our privacy, and terrorism. Misinformation is spread on social media due to the lack of regulation of content, and a large percentage of information on social media is false. According to Chris Messerol, the Deputy Director for Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technology of the Initiative Fellow in Foreign Policy, the flow of misinformation on Twitter is a function of both human and technical factors. Human biases play an important role, since we are more likely to react quickly to content that taps into our existing grievances and biases, then these tweets will generate quick engagement. It's only after this engagement happens that the technical side begins to kick in. For if we reshare, like, tweet, or comment on these tweets, then it'll newsfeed algorithm will then disperse it and spread it among other people. This prompts even more of engagement and it'll tap into the biases of even more people, and so on. At its worst, this cycle could turn social media into a kind of confirmation bias machine that is perfectly tailored for the spread of misinformation. Social media companies also violate your privacy by using your personal information, as well as your past searches and interests on social media and your web browsers. They sell the information to companies looking to place certain ads for you, which is called targeting advertising, but they also sell it to third-party websites that have malicious intentions towards you. According to Kalev Taru, a top 100 global thinker from Georgetown University, the web has become a dystopian surveillance state in which companies stalk their unsuspecting victims across the web, extracting maximal profit from removing any shred of privacy or dignity, and socializing the risk of data breach and damage to the user, while privatizing all the monetary benefits of exploiting them. Social media platforms often generate the majority of their revenue through selling hyper-targeted advertising based on algorithmically mining every single selling of their unwilling users' lives. As long as these social media companies are allowed to and continue to regulate themselves, your privacy and personal information is at risk, as these social media companies are generating the majority of their profit from this. Terrorists also use social media to further their goals, recruit members, and spread their message. In a study by Gabriel Wieman, a professor of communication from the University of Haifa, he found that nearly 90% of organized terrorism on the web takes place via social media. This is because social media allows the terrorist groups to engage with their networks and release their messages directly to their intended audience. As of 2014, following the beheading of Army Surgeon Peter Kassig, there have been over 5 recorded executions and beheadings posted to social media from terrorist groups. This allows these terrorist groups to inspire the feelings of terror and havoc that they want to among the common people. And a lot of terrorist groups have followed ISIS in this manner, including the Taliban, Al-Shabaab, and Boko Haram, all terrorist groups with unregulated social media accounts. On the web, these terrorist groups remain untrackable and unpunishable, making it so that there are little side consequences to these terrorist groups being on the web, doing what they currently are right now, and they are allowed to connect with their network even faster than before, allowing them to achieve their agenda. As you can see, currently there are many issues going on social media, including violations of privacy, selling of your information, and terrorism. And the social media companies have failed in doing anything to stop any of these. And so I urge you to vote pro ballot so that the government can step in and do this.
Thank you, Liam. So I would like to invite Alison to question Liam's case. Alison, you will have 2 minutes. Would you like to time yourself, or would you prefer me timing your cross-examination part?
Can you time it also? Because
Yes, no worries.
how do you know that misinformation is spread due to the lack of regulation on social media?
Well, if the social media companies were to regulate the spread of misinformation, it would not, it would be, it's because the fact that these social media companies are actually benefiting and gaining monetary value over the spread of misinformation. For misinformation often quickly generates a lot of responses, prompting people to go to the social media company and look at this, which attracts new users and monetary benefits.
But how do you know that the government is going to take action on this problem and solve the issue of the spreading of misinformation?
Well, first, it's the government's job to do that and to protect us, the people. But also, if they were to censor out information, it would help preserve the economy for you want these small businesses to flourish. And as you can see on social media, you have a lot of big businesses lying to us on their marketing campaigns. So it would also protect businesses from slandering while also making sure they're telling us the complete truth.
Okay. My next question is, should the government really be the one to solve all of our problems?
Well, first, they have the adequate technology and resources to regulate social media, but also social media companies, time after time again, even if they control the network, despite all their programs, they've all failed. And so we need another solution in the long term. We can't just keep waiting for these social media companies to try to find a solution.
How do you know that the terrorist groups on social media are affecting the users that see their content?
Well, a lot of people are viewing these without even knowing what they are. For example, you can name a title whatever you want. You can be like, for example, if you wanted to name something as a cartoon, someone could post it saying it's a cartoon episode, and then they click on it, and then it's like a beheading of someone by terrorists. And if you see, for example, like a little kid who's trying to watch the shows and they see that, it could have permanent damage on them.
Thank you. Time's up. So I would like to invite Allison to share her opening speech. So dear parents, we've heard Liam giving an opening speech for pro side, and now Allison will present an opening speech for con side. Allison, as soon as you're ready, go.
Our society nowadays greatly depends on social media. We receive news through it, and we communicate with other people through it. Many people even have jobs on social media platforms. But if the government were to regulate social media platforms, social media as we know it can be negatively affected. So I strongly negate the resolution that the government regulations on social media companies do more good than harm, because number one, people won't be able to express their opinions freely. Number two, the government could tell us which news is fake or not. And number three, there will be fewer new companies and more companies that leave social media. My first main point is that people won't be able to express their opinions freely because the government might not agree and they could take these opinions down. According to Trinity College at Cambridge University, in most totalitarian governments like North Korea, the censorship of social media by the government is a key instrument in oppressing and subjugating the citizens. This shows that if our government were to regulate our social media platforms, the censorship of opinions would violate our right to the freedom of speech. My second main point is that the government could tell people what news is fake or not, because they would have that power to do what they want. According to Amelia Irvine, a research economist, it is entirely possible that some government agency would be set up to act as a third party to find which news stories are fake. It's not difficult to imagine how this sort of power could be misused. 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale give us a clear illustration of why the government should never be allowed to define what is true and what is not. This shows that if the government were to regulate social media, they could use it to their advantage. It is up to them to decide which news is fake or not, and we can never know if they are really telling the truth. My last and final point is that there will be fewer new companies and more companies that leave social media because they won't want to join or stay in a market that is regulated by the government. According to Professor Rakesh Kumar from the University of Illinois, collective experiences over many industries, for example, banking, healthcare, insurance, oil, etc., has shown that government regulations stifle integrations and create monopolies. The high cost of complying with regulations inhibits competition since it discourages upstarts from entering a market. The whole point of social media is to spread news and share new ideas and spread news. And if there are less and less social media companies, new ideas could be lost. Social media would not be used as often, and it would reverse our progress in the expression of individuality and the fight for democracy. As you can see, government regulations on social media could be more harmful than good. It could violate our right to the freedom of speech, potentially lead to government manipulation and limit advances in society. So, dear audience, if you want to keep your constitutional rights, be free of suspicion of the government, and continue our growth in society, be sure to vote for the negative.
Thank you, Allison. Liam, it's your turn to question Allison's opening speech. Liam, would you like to time yourself or would you like me to do so?
We can do both, so I'll have a timer on as well.
Yes, okay.
So is it true that you believe that if the government were to take control of social media and regulate it, it would cause our violation of rights?
Well, if people post opinions that don't agree with the government, then the government could take it down, which would be violating our right to the freedom of speech.
However, aren't social media companies already doing this by violating our rights and censoring out posts that could be bad for their business?
Well, if the government would regulate social media, I don't think that the government could help this issue be solved because the government also violates our privacy. So it would be hypocritical if they tried to protect the privacy of social media users because they already violate our privacy, and that would open them up to a lot of criticism.
Also, when you talk about how the government would cause more fake news and information, how do we know what's true or not on the media currently? For we know there's a lot of fake news there.
Well, we might not know what news is fake or not, but if people can be fooled by the information on social media, then since the government is also run by people like us, they could be fooled too, and that might not help the spreading of misinformation on social media.
Wouldn't a program that would like check citations and sources for articles work that way then?
Well, people could still spread misinformation even if there are programs because there's always going to be something that doesn't catch everything on social media that's fake news.
Do you think that if new companies were to join social media, would it lead to a wider spread of this malicious activity?
Well, but can you repeat the question again?
You said that if the government were to censor out these, that it would lead to less companies being there. Do you think it would lead to a wider spread of malicious activity?
Allison, you may answer.
Well, not really, because the social media companies are there to be helpful, and I don't think that it could spread malicious content if there are more companies that come in to the market.
Thank you. Liam, it's your turn to present a refutation speech.
Respected audience, my opponent has claimed that people won't be able to express their opinions freely, the government could tell people what news is fake or not, and there will be fewer new companies and more companies that leave social media. I will refute them all, starting with the first one. My opponent has argued that social media should not be regulated by the government because it would cause a violation of our rights. However, social media companies have already violated our rights farther than the government ever would. They sell our personal information, search history, and, among other things, to third-party websites. And while some of this is for advertising purposes, a lot of it is also to people with malicious intentions. Some of these people gain this information with the intent to dox you. Doxing is the buying, selling, and using of personal information found online. Typically, this doxing-related crime is assisted and utilized by the using of third-party information reseller websites, often containing the information of people who don't even know it's been posted there. One form of doxing is called swatting, in which malicious hackers find someone's address and then call the cops on them with a fake domestic violence dispute. Such an incident led to the death of Andrew Finch from Kansas. Andrew Finch someone called the cops on Andrew Finch after discovering his address, reporting a fake domestic violence, saying that he had murdered someone and had a hostage at his home, which caused the police to shoot him once he opened the door. This led to a false death, and the fact that this led to a death is unacceptable. In addition, my opponent has also claimed that the government would be able to decide what is considered fake news. However, the government taking control of this fake news would actually not make this issue any worse. For right now on social media, misinformation is already spread like wildfire, and we can already not even tell what is true or not. That's why it's so important, and people say, to fact check and make sure there's a source for everything you read on social media. Social media companies also are already censoring and taking down any posts that could potentially hinder their reputation or hurt their business. One example of how fake news on social media caused great destruction is when in 2016, a shooting incident occurred at a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. during the middle of the day. According to Takashi Imura, the Washington, D.C. office general manager of Marubeni American Corporation, a man brought a rifle and began shooting in a pizza shop called Comet Ping Pong, which had become embroiled in a situation including false tweets widely spread on the internet claiming that this pizza shop was the base for a pedophile sex ring involving Hillary Clinton and members of her campaign. The operators of this pizza shop began receiving a multitude of uh, threats from right-wing activists who believed that these threats turned out to be real. However, this turned out all to be false, and the fact that this led to an actual shooting is unacceptable. And yet a lot of people believed it because of the sheer amount of misinformation going on in the media right now. A lot of this misinformation revolves around the government, as seen in this example. So if the government were to regulate social media, it would actually improve the situation because the government would censor these articles that would go against government figures, causing the amount of fake news to go down rather than up. My opponents also claim that the government would be able to decide what is considered that more businesses would leave social media companies and that they would not use it. However, I believe that it would cause them to go on it more. For we live in a capitalist society, and the government's goal is to protect that. And so they would encourage businesses to be on social media and even endorse them for doing so. Currently, companies are protected by will be protected by the government from false slandering and also things that could hinder their reputation based off misinformation. It is also the job of these companies to tell us, the consumer, the truth. And right now, many of these companies are directly lying to us about their products on social media. If the government were to censor these companies' false claims, it would help us actually understand the product, and it would make sure that the market is better for the average person. For example, Skechers Shape Up line of shoes contained ads that featured endorsement from multiple chiropractors who recommended the kicks based off of a bunch of independent studies clinical studies that he had conducted. However, the leader of the study, the chiropractor, turned out to be married to the Skechers marketing executive, and Skechers had paid for the study, according to Rebecca Hiscott of the HuffPost. Respected audience, I refuted all my opponent's arguments, and I've shown why my values are more important. This is why I urge you to vote pro ballot.
Thank you, Liam. Allison, it's your turn to present your refutation speech.
Respected audience, my opponent claims that misinformation is spread due to the lack of regulation of content, that social media companies violate our privacy by using our personal information, and the terrorist groups use social media to further spread awareness of their hostile goals. I will refute them all, starting from the first one. My opponent claims that misinformation is spread through social media due to the lack of regulation of content. However, if the government were to regulate social media, I believe that they wouldn't be able to stop the spreading of misinformation because if people are fooled by the information on social media, the government could be too. According to the Cato Institute, preventing harms caused by fake news or hate speech lies well beyond the jurisdiction of the government. Tech firms appear determined to deal with such harms, leaving little for the government to do. This shows that the issue of the spreading of fake news on social media could not be helped by government regulations. My opponent's second claim is that social media companies violate our privacy by using personal information as well as past searches and interests on social media and web browsers. While this may be true, the government also violates your privacy, so it would be hypocritical if they tried protecting the privacy of social media users. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, government agents frequently trample our privacy and violate the Constitution. Glenn Morris, an activist, found out from a secret file Denver Police Department had kept on him for 16 years that someone had once plotted to kill him. This shows that it would not be guaranteed that the government would solve the issue of the spreading of social media companies violating our privacy. My opponent argues that terrorist groups use social media to further their goals, recruit members, and spread their message. Nonetheless, there is not any evidence that terrorist group sympathizers that were lured by social media platforms have caused harm because of terrorist speech. As stated by the ruling of Fields v. Twitter, Inc., the allegations do not support a plausible inference of proximate causation between Twitter's provision of accounts to ISIS and the deaths of Fields and Preach. Plaintiffs allege no connection between the shooter, Abu Zaid, and Twitter. There are no facts indicating that Abu Zaid's attack was in any way impacted, helped by, or the result of ISIS's presence on the social network. This shows that terrorist groups on social media don't necessarily make sympathizers cause harm to people. Respected audience, I have refuted all of my opponent's claims. I have pointed out why my values are more important in this debate, and that is why I asked for the con ballot.
Thank you, Allison. So, dear parents, so far you've heard two opening speeches, two cross-examinations, two refutation speeches, and now we're heading to closing speeches. So the first one to present a closing speech will be Liam in front of the pro side. Liam? Liam, you need to unmute your mic. Yeah.
Dear Judge, let me remind you once again why I've won this debate. This debate was about social media violating rights, terrorists spreading their messages over social media, and fake news. I've won the first clash by showing that social media companies are already violating our rights farther than the government ever would. They violate our First Amendment by censoring out posts and articles that could affect their brand name or have a negative impact on the company, which is why you rarely find articles and information slandering social media companies on the social media platforms. They are nearly all on paper press. In addition, social media companies violate our First Amendment and privacy by selling our information to third-party websites, some of which have malicious intentions. I've won the second clash because my opponent has failed to provide a counterargument. For while they talked about the fact that social media didn't impact terrorist sympathizer actions, she did not mention how it could affect us, the common people, who may see these gruesome images and beheadings causing havoc and terror throughout the common people. She failed to provide a solution to how to regulate terrorism and keep these accounts from springing up and posting the content that they currently are. I won the third clash because I have proved that there's already an abundance of fake news on social media and the internet, and the amount is only growing because of the lack of regulation from social media companies. Government regulation would crack down significantly on this amount by not only taking down articles and posts that have false studies and no citations attached to them, and it could also regulate businesses that are currently telling lies and showing false marketing towards us, while also protecting these big brand names from unnecessary slander and misinformation that could hinder their reputation. Dear audience, imagine a world where our privacy is constantly being violated, information sold to those with malicious intentions without us even knowing it, and where the media is so polluted with false information that we ourselves cannot even tell what is going on, and that messages of terrorism and beheadings are commonplace. Now, what we offer from our side of the world is where we are knowledgeable and can trust what we read on the internet, and that we were reading 100% the truth, where we can trust in marketing and advertisement and know that we will receive the expected product, and we won't have to worry about a violation of our rights when trying to merely browse the internet. We won't have to deal with the fact that a 5-year-old could potentially see a terrorist message and a beheading and then be exposed to such horrendous images at such a young age, because they will no longer exist on the web. If this is the world you want to live in, then do not hesitate to vote pro ballot.
Thank you, Liam. So let's hear how Allison will convince you to vote for her cause. Now, Allison will share her closing speech.
Dear audience, let me remind you once again why I have won this debate. This debate was about terrorist groups on social media, the spreading of misinformation on social media, and the violation of our rights. I have won the first clash about terrorist groups on social media with my evidence. Fields v. Twitter lawsuit has shown the terrorist groups did not affect the shooter in the spoken case to do what he did. So, there wouldn't be a difference between the government not regulating the content of terrorist groups and them regulating the content. I have won the second clash about spreading of misinformation with my reasoning that the government regulating this issue on social media would not be helpful. If people on social media are fooled by misinformation, the government could be fooled also. There is no evidence that the government would try and stop or slow the spreading of misinformation. I have won the third and final clash about social media violating our rights because though they may be using private information, the government uses it also. We couldn't trust that the government would solve the problem since it would be bad for their own sake to try to protect the privacy of social media users if they don't protect their people's privacy in general. This would open them up to a lot of criticism. Dear audience, imagine a world where the social media platforms you go to for comfort, news, and to speak your minds is regulated by the government, restraining these sites. Now, what I offer from my side is a world where there are new ideas and opportunities with no restrictions from the government. If this is the world you want to live in, do not hesitate to vote for the con ballot.
Thank you. So I hope that everyone enjoyed this debate as Josh and I did. So we would like to announce our next debaters. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Liam. So moving on to Arsh Raja on pro side versus Juhi Desai on con side. So I would like to ask Alison and Liam to make some space for Arsh and Raja on the panel and Arsh and Juhi. And guys, you may join the panel. The floor is yours. So debaters may start presenting their speeches. And the first one to present will be Arsh on the pro side. Arsh, we are ready as soon as you are.
More than 60% of teens who have experienced cyberbullying say that cyberbullying immensely affected their ability to feel safe and learn at school, according to Hinduja. Cyberbullying is a norm of the internet nowadays because you can do it so freely and anonymously, and most of the time the offender is not caught in the process. Kids have more freedom than any generation before, but with these freedoms come harsh consequences, such as low self-esteem, facing time in jail, depression, anxiety, and in some cases, suicide. Private companies have proven to be inefficient in monitoring their own social media platforms. So the only way to end the problem of cybercrimes is to let the government monitor and control some features of social media. Technology has progressed to the stage that everyone is one click away from joining a social media platform. However, with the free and easy access to social media, there are many downsides. Social media platforms are breeding grounds for people who attempt suicide because of the high rates of cyberbullying, harassment, and suicide pacts that can happen almost anonymously. According to David D. Luxton, PhD, surveys taken between 2004 and 2010 that were compiled showed that the victims of cyberbullying range from 20.8% to 40.6%. According to Hinduja, kids who are the victims of cyberbullying are 2 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers. In 2008, Japan experienced 220 cases of suicide attempts using a hydrogen sulfide gas method that had been going around in an online chat room. Private companies will not do enough to prevent self-harm and suicide from getting a platform. Their inaction shows that the government must have moderation over social media to promote the common good of the people. Social media has a linear association with depression and anxiety in teens and young adults. Therefore, the government should intervene and control the age group that can and can't use social media platforms. In a US nationwide survey, 1,787 people between the ages of 19 and 32 were given a depression and anxiety test. Those who use 0 to 2 social media platforms were significantly less depressed than those who use 7 to 11 social media platforms. In another US national survey, 500,000 8th to 12th graders were showing a 33% increase in depressive symptoms. In 2007, smartphones were first introduced, and by 2015, 92% of all teens and young adults had access to a smartphone. The depressive symptoms correlate almost exactly with expanding smartphone usage in teenagers. Between 2010 and 2015, the counseling centers in high schools and colleges experienced a 30% increase in visits. We urgently need government interference to save a generation of young adults and teens from suffering long-term depression and anxiety. Social media makes it easy for minors to send explicit photos of themselves to others, which leads to detrimental effects on mental health and can lead to unexpected consequences. When a minor sends an explicit image to another person, they can be charged with distribution of child pornography. A study showed that teenagers who sexted were 7 times more likely to be sexually active than their peers. This puts them at high risk for unintentional pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and HIV. Teenagers can be naive and not know the consequences of their actions. Social media companies are inefficient in preventing child pornography, thus proving that the effective way to combat these actions is to increase government control on social media. Distribution of child pornography is just one of many, many consequences that comes with the use of social media. The government must intervene to make sure that these consequences can be reduced in number because private companies simply do not care about their consumers. We must allow the government to protect the future generations from a lifetime of issues and consequences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arsh. Juhi, it's your turn to question Arsh's opening speech. Would you like to time yourself or would you like me to do that?
Can you do it,
Can you
please?
time it?
Yes, of course, no worries. So I'm ready as soon as you are.
How will the government know if children lie about their age on social media?
So the government cannot know if they lie about their age. However, the government can enforce penalties to those who do lie about their age. For example, if there's a minimum 16-year-old age limit to joining social media and a 13-year-old joins it, the parent or guardian of that child can get fined.
So it's possible for them to just stay anonymous on this social media platform and they'll never be caught.
Yes, however, there are penalties, but the penalties can be harsh depending on their actions, which minimizes the chance that they will actually lie about their age and be anonymous about it.
The next question is, how can government lower suicide and depression rates?
So first of all, we should destigmatize getting help for suicidal thoughts and depression and anxiety. We need to destigmatize so that people can actually be encouraged to get help and not just confide within themselves.
But destigmatizing doesn't need the government to be involved with it.
Well, yes, the government can fund programs that do help destigmatize and raise awareness to these depression and anxiety, people who have depression and anxiety.
For them to fund programs, they don't need to be regulating social media. They're able to do that right now without them being in control of social media.
Yeah, they can do that right now, but however, this plan also needs social media usage so that we can restrict the amount of teens who use social media because we don't want them to be negatively influenced by people who are anonymous and cyberbully them.
My last question is, how would the United States regulate cyberbullying from other countries?
So each social media platform has their own server depending on their country. These servers can be regulated. And for example, if there is a threat from coming from India or China and cyberbullying attacks, we can simply block those users from getting into United States servers.
So the but
Thank
we
you,
have
time's up. Okay, so I would like to invite Juhi to give her opening speech.
Do any of you use social media? Now imagine that every single thing you saw on social media was being filtered by the government. In order to protect freedom of speech, the government should not have control of social media or the ability to filter social media to fit their political agenda. The government should not regulate social media companies because then they would be suppressing our freedom of speech rights guaranteed to us under the First Amendment. According to the Cato Institute, regulations of social media companies might either indirectly restrict individual speech or directly limit a right to curate an internet platform. The First Amendment offers strong protection against such restrictions. One example of what has happened because of how politics has affected social media is the oppression of a teen because of the political stance that he took on the internet. He wasn't able to express his opinion and use his First Amendment rights. According to The Hill, popular classical liberal YouTuber Dave Rubin has complained that his videos are flagged and discriminated against because of alleged right-wing content. This article states that the government should not be able to interfere with the political stance that people take on social media. Here's another reason the government cannot interfere with the internet. According to The Hill, the government cannot force these companies to open up their sites and associate with viewpoints that their owners and shareholders find objectionable any more than it can force you to display government-approved speech on your private property. The government should not have more power than the people they serve, and they should not have the right to tell people what they are allowed to believe in or say. But not only is the United States restricting rights on social media, other countries are as well. The Chinese government controls their social media platforms, and as a result, many citizens are misinformed about their political issues and their country's well-being. Saudi Arabia also censors the social media their citizens view that the government deems inappropriate. They use American-owned filters to automatically filter out certain topic material. The number of groups who are faced with human rights violations as a result of their leaders trying to suppress their right to freedom of speech shows the severity of this issue. According to Education on Saudi Arabia, ultimately, there are many different ways in which issues of censorship and restrictions on freedom connect to the meeting of Sustainable Development Goals. By limiting the amount of freedom that its citizens have and subjecting them to things such as constant surveillance, frequent arrest, and unfair sentencing, those in charge are creating a significant degree of inequality between themselves and their citizens. If the government has control over what is being posted on social media, they can use it to their advantage and can censor media that does not agree with their political agenda. In order to protect freedom of speech, the government should not have control of social media or the ability to filter it to fit their political ideas. We won't know what's true and what's not, and the government can lie to us. When the government controls social media, we all lose.
Thank you, Juhi. Arsh, you may start with the cross-examination. Would you like me to time your cross-examination?
Do you want her to time the
Yeah,
cross-examination?
yeah, yes. Would you like me to do so?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, your time may start.
Why would social media companies want to protect its consumers without a profit incentive?
The more users that are on social media, the more money they make because they sell our data for money. So if there are less users on there, they won't be making as much money.
So, would you agree that selling our data is an invasion of our privacy?
Yes, but if the government's involved, they will also do the same thing, and there's no stopping what's already happening. Every free website you use is selling your data to make money. There's no other way for them to do it.
Okay, my next question is, social media companies also have biases too, right? Because TikTok is a Chinese app and is known for taking down anti-Chinese messages. So how is there a difference between government taking down, isn't there like a bias in social media companies too?
TikTok is a Chinese-owned company, like you said, and the fact that the Chinese government is taking down videos against China on TikTok is different than the United States taking down videos because they are not a democracy. And TikTok was going to be banned in the United States for that specific purpose, too.
Okay, so first I'd like to address that America's not a democracy, it's a republic. So, but how would freedom of speech rights be violated if the government would simply take down pro-suicide message and child pornography?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. How would freedom of speech rights be violated if the government would simply take down pro-suicide messages and child pornography?
But if the government has control over social media, we do not know what they are going to censor and what they're not going to censor. Once they have control over it, they have control over everything that's being posted on it.
But don't we have a Bill of Rights to protect us from our privacy being infringed upon?
Most countries do have something like that, but when government turns bad, there's not much you can do to stop that.
So
Thank
my
you.
last,
Time's up. So I would like to invite Arsh to give his refutation speech.
Judges, my opponent has made many claims in her argument against government intervention on social media platforms. She has said the government should not regulate social media companies because it would be a suppression of our First Amendment rights, and that other countries have gone too extreme, and then and that the government should not have more power than the people they serve. However, I would like to refute all of these claims, starting with the first one. Contrary to my opponent's belief that government intervention on social media is a violation of our First Amendment, I would like to state that there are already limits to free speech, expression, and assembly in place, and your speech rights are not as free as you think they are. As decided in the Supreme Court case Chaplinsky v. New Hampshire, the First Amendment does not protect fighting words, which incited violence and injury onto another person. Cyberbullying, harassment, and suicide pacts are the epitome of online violence and therefore are not protected under the First Amendment. The statement that other countries who monitor social media have gone too extreme and now everything on their social media platforms are fit to the government's political agenda is a great example of a slippery slope fallacy. The founding fathers had put a Bill of Rights to protect our sacred personal rights from being infringed upon. At some point, if the government does try to abuse its power, we can declare it a breach of privacy and a violation of our Bill of Rights. The suggestion that I made was some government interference on social media, not totalitarianism and 24/7 online surveillance. My opponent has mentioned that the government should not have more power than the people. However, the government has always had more power than the people. They have a military force of over 1.3 million people in it. The police have a monopoly on violence on citizens to ensure order and safety. Social media regulation would be nothing compared to these things. By saying that the government should have less power than the people, you are advocating for chaos and a society where the minority is silenced and violence is everywhere. You need the government to protect your individual rights from being infringed upon. Judges, I have refuted all the claims that my opponent has made in her arguments, and I have proved that some government intervention is necessary to maintain a healthy society free from cybercrimes and online influence suicide attempts. And this is why I am asking you for your pro-government intervention vote on this ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Arsh. So this was a refutation speech given by pro side, and now let's hear a refutation speech given by con side and Juhi. You may start as soon as you're ready.
Respected audience, my opponent has claimed that social media platforms allow you to cyberbully almost anonymously, social media leads to suicide pacts and attempts, and social media makes it easy for minors to send explicit images. I will refute them all, starting from the first one. My opponent claims that social media allows for cyberbullying and the government should be allowed to censor it. Schools would be able to control cyberbullying much better than the government because they have an understanding of each child as an individual and are able to create a safe environment where students feel safe enough to tell adults about cyberbullying. An article by Phronix states, in Iowa, the governor's bullying prevention summit developed a proposal for a new law that would allow teachers to punish cyberbullies and its victims. These kinds of changes are now happening everywhere in the United States. More and more schools are creating programs to help with cyberbullying and its victims. Another article by Think the Vote says, some schools believe it is within their rights to step in and punish any bullying that takes place by students, whether on or off of school property. Many communities are passing laws to allow schools to punish cyberbullies regardless of where it takes place. Schools will be able to take better care of cyberbullying than the government could if they were censoring social media. My opponent has also claimed that social media can lead to suicide pacts and attempts. The government has no way to do a better job of regulating these things than social media is already doing. Instead, we should take different preventative measures, and schools should teach children from a young age how to stay safe on social media and not get involved in dangerous things. CBS states, as teen suicides increase across the country, experts and parents say social media has majorly contributed to the rise. The problem is with social media itself, not its regulations. The only real way for this issue to be solved is the complete eradication of teens on social media, which is completely unrealistic. My opponent's last argument is that the government should be able to remove privately sent explicit images. Sending explicit images is not justification enough for the government to control social media. This is something that is private, and most of the time between two people. The government should not try to interfere with this because it can be considered extremely invasive, and it would give them a lot of power. As I stated in my opening speech, the government should not have more power than the people they serve. And if someone is harmed during this, it should be taken up with a trusted adult, not the government. Respected audience, I have refuted all of my opponent's arguments. I have pointed out why my values are more important in this debate. The government regulating social media is infringement upon our First Amendment, and there are other, more efficient ways to keep children safe on social media. And that is why I asked for the con ballot.
Thank you, Juhi. So, it's time to close this debate. The first one to close this debate with his opening speech will be Arsh. Arsh, the floor is yours.
Judges, I would like to reiterate why my points prove to be more consistent and realistic than my opponent's arguments. This debate was about whether schools or the government would be better to handle the problem of dealing with cybercrimes, whether social media regulation is a violation of our First Amendment, and whether it is the responsibility of social media companies or the government to deal with cybercrimes. The first clash is won by the pro side because of the fact that schools do not have the funding to monitor and enforce punishments of cybercrimes. This argument is also ignorant to the fact that adults make up 90% of online social media users, according to Pew Research, thus rendering schools useless when it comes to monitoring and enforcing punishments on adult users. The second clash is about the violation of our First Amendment if social media companies are regulated by the government. This is also ignorant to the fact that governments would only regulate content that encourages suicide, cyberbullying, or self-harm, not general information. Furthermore, the court case Chaplinsky v. New Hampshire states that fighting words are not protected under the First Amendment. Therefore, the government has every right to make sure that cyberbullying is minimized and punishable by moderating social media usage. In the third clash, my opponent argued that social media companies are better at regulating content than the government. However, she fails to see that in a capitalist society, there is no incentive to protect the consumer. And for almost all cases of suicide and cyberbullying, the social media platform cannot be charged with being unable to prevent the suicide of a user. The government, however, already has access to metadata and therefore should use it to prevent cybercrimes from happening in the first place. Judges, we live in a capitalist society where social media companies grow bigger in size every day. Without government intervention on social media, companies could simply ignore the fact that online suicide rates are increasing steadily. We need to make sure that the government can regulate and check the powers of social media corporations to stop our country from becoming something out of a dystopian film. And that is why I am requesting you to vote for the pro ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Arsh. So it's time for Juhi to close debate from her side as a con speaker.
Dear audience, let me remind you once again why my points have proven to be more prominent in this debate. I have claimed that schools should help with cyberbullying and its victims instead of the government. Suicide is an issue with social media itself, not the regulations. And sending explicit images is a private thing that the government should have no part of. I win the first clash because schools have proven to be a better way of managing cyberbullying than the government. This is shown in an article by Phoronix that states that schools are now punishing cyberbullies whether the incident happened on or off of campus. I win the second clash because my opponent stated suicide pacts would go down with government regulations. This is not true. These kinds of things are human nature. So the problem lies within social media itself, not its regulations. And nothing the government does can stop this except for the complete removal of teens on social media, which, as I stated in my refutation speech, is completely unrealistic. I win the last clash because I have proven that government regulations should have nothing to do with sending explicit images, as this would be extremely invasive of our privacy, and the government should not be able to hold this much power. Dear audience, imagine a world where the government was controlling everything you see on social media. This could end in chaos and complete corruption of our government. Now imagine a world where students are able to get help with cyberbullying in a safe environment from their teachers and schools. Imagine having privacy of your own life and not worrying about the government knowing your every move. If this is the world you want to live in, I respectfully ask for you to vote for the con ballot.
Thank you, Juhi, and thank you, Arsh. This was a great debate. So let's see who's our who are our next debaters. And dear audience, I really hope you enjoyed this debate as well. So we are moving to Kevin Kao and Sahil Shah. So I would like to invite both of them to join the panel. Kevin will present the pro side and Sahil will present the con side of the same topic. Enjoy.
A recent study performed in April 2020 on Statista found that 4.7 billion people worldwide were active internet users, and 3.81 billion people were active on social media. With so many people online, it's no wonder why government officials should regulate social media. Government regulation of social media is beneficial for both the user and companies. These regulations are also needed for the following reasons: child exposure to content, endangerment of people's privacy and information, and misinformation causes devastation. Social media needs to be regulated because of its wide range of users of all ages. The Twitch streamer Alinity has content with animal abuse. This content's open for all kids to watch. An article by Natasha Daniels, a child anti therapist, states that kids attempt pranks, tried things, even gained fears from the videos they watched. A YouTube channel called Hi Ho Kids even posted 100 kids cursing. Other YouTube creators have used copyrighted material, which can cause kids to learn plagiarism. An article by NBC states that creators have copied Disney and Nickelodeon shows just to show kids inappropriate content. An article on The Atlantic states that little kids are responsible for billions of views on YouTube, and YouTube was popular among device-using children under the age of 2. With so many children under the age of 2 being exposed to profanity and violence, it's no wonder why the government should regulate social media. The government should regulate social media because of the endangerment to people's privacy and information. YouTube bloggers and vloggers post content with bystanders. By posting the faces and identities of the people around them, the viewer knows who is where and who does what. This means that their neighborhood may be entitled to robberies, trespassing, public embarrassment, and harassment. An NBC News video on burglars states that you should be careful about what you post because burglars will check social media. An article on Your Local Security states that robbers look for easy homes, patterns, and when you leave your house. Thieves and burglars can check videos to find their next target. Social media needs to be regulated because of the identities, lives, and properties at risk with every post. Without these regulations, innocent people, homes, and identities are at risk. Social media needs to be regulated because misinformation causes devastation. Misinformation makes it difficult to determine if something is credible. With the recent pandemic came a horde of fake studies and articles. You can find many articles on COVID-19. However, many aren't true. This includes eating garlic, gargling salt water, and using anti-malaria drugs or disinfectants. Many social media sites have found and banned fake articles such as Plandemic, a short film about how the pandemic is just a ruse to coerce vaccines. Misinformation causes mistrust and distrust. If an article lies to you about a sale, would you trust the article again? This is the same for scientific articles. In the case of pandemic, people distrusted the government. Social media benefits from these regulations because misinformation is everywhere. And without these regulations in place, people could lose their lives to fake treatments. Even you can be a victim of misinformation. With over 3.81 billion people worldwide on social media, anyone can fall victim to misinformation, privacy loss, and inappropriate content. These regulations keep these problems in check and keep social media companies from harming their users. I doubt removing regulations is worth poisoning the minds of the youth, losing privacy, and misinforming the masses.
Thank you, Kevin. So this was pro opening speech, and now we will witness a cross examination done by Sahil. So, would you like to time yourself, guys, or would you like me to do that?
We can time ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kevin, do you?
so yeah,
Time.
Kevin, you will be in charge of timing.
When you're ready.
So, you may.
Okay. Kevin, what evidence do you have linking robberies to social media?
Well, social media companies don't exactly regulate these crimes, so we don't have the right that we don't know the evidence. But there are examples of this on social media. There's a crime called a performance crime, where people will perform a crime and post it publicly just for the reaction.
You say there are cases where this happens, but do you have any concrete statistics on robberies and crimes being linked to social media?
I don't have statistics, but I believe I can find many examples of people posting a crime on social media. One example of this is on many popular YouTube channels, people would decide to sleep away inside a store. This is known as trespassing and is a law that it is a crime that is not normally caught because the people would come in late, stay there, and leave early.
How would the government do a better job at controlling people's personal information as it is not necessarily illegal?
How would government regulate misinformation? Well, the government has access to many satellites, and information travels through these satellites to get to the next person. The government can scan every article, can look through articles to find fake articles or fake information that can help stop these articles from getting to new people and influencing people in a bad way.
How would the government do that as it is not, as of now, as it is not set up with the proper technology? It would take time, wouldn't it? Would it take time?
Well, I wouldn't think it would take too much time. We were able to send a man to space before the time presented by the government. The government gave us until a certain year to send a man to the moon. We did that a few years earlier. I believe that this shouldn't be too much of an issue.
Thank you. Time's up. Great job, guys. So I would like to invite Sahil to give his opening speech.
Okay. Social media is the platform in which we can really express ourselves as well as push for our opinions. How would it feel if out of the blue those exact freedoms were taken away from us? That is exactly what will happen when we give the government the power to regulate social media. Giving the government the power to regulate social media without the proper resources or a plan that is compatible with their constitution is unacceptable. Government regulations will clearly infringe upon our First Amendment rights as it will limit our freedom of speech. Last year, the Supreme Court ruling on Packing v. North Carolina says that social media platforms are the new public square, and access to them is protected by the government. And access to them is protected by the First Amendment, which guarantees its freedom of speech. This case proves that social media is not only protected by the First Amendment, but is guaranteed freedom of speech. The U.S. greatly values speech in the public sphere, and according to the Constitution, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment or religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech. The right to hear speech is also protected by the First Amendment, and according to the Cato Institute, there are few remedies that are actually compatible with the Constitution. Furthermore, allowing the government to regulate social media would be suppressing our natural-born right in the United States. I have just displayed how allowing government to regulate social media could be in complete violation of your First Amendment. The government is not even set up with the proper technology to even start regulating social media. How is it technology even determine what is fake and what is not? And even if some content is found to be fake, how would the government regulate or take it down? These questions bring many legal loopholes, obstructing the power of the government to effectively regulate social media. According to the ORF Foundation, the government does not have the technological wherewithal to detect and remove objectionable social media content at the requisite scale or speed. Therefore, the government should have no power, as it does not even have the proper technology to regulate our social media platforms. The lack of a plan stops the government from effectively regulating social media, and if we were to allow them, there would be complete chaos. Finally, allowing the government to regulate social media would create a huge decrease in new smaller businesses. Social media is used by many small businesses to help start up as well as grow. According to the AU business page, social media can help you engage with customers and find out what people are saying about your business. You can also use social media for advertising, promotional giveaways, and mobile applications. Clearly, social media helps businesses a lot, and government regulations would negatively impact them. According to the ORS, the high cost of complying with regulation inhibits competition since it discourages upstarts from entering the market. It also disproportionately harms existing smaller players. The ORS continues to prove that social media regulations will trigger exits and discourage new investments. Without new investments, small businesses do not have the ability to grow and thrive. For a country that desperately needs startups, innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment, social media regulations are a very bad idea. Allowing these regulations to go through will hurt small businesses and then in effect further amplify the ever-shrinking middle class. Obviously, government regulations on social media are a bad idea, and they should not be given the power to regulate social media. Having the government regulate social media without a concrete plan that is compatible with our First Amendment and a plan that does not hurt our small businesses is unacceptable. Social media is the platform in which we can really express ourselves and push for our opinions. Putting limitations on this platform will not only limit our freedom, but also destroy the biggest form of communication in the 21st century.
Thank you, Sahil. So this was an opening speech from the con side, and now pro side will question con side through cross-examination. Kevin, would you like to time this cross-examination?
Yeah.
Good.
When you say that the government infringes our First Amendment, we can protest and petition that so that we get a new government and we get to change how the government works. But how can we do that when social media disobeys our First Amendment?
When you sign up for social media, what you do is you agree to a certain amount of guidelines. These guidelines are clearly written when you sign up, and you would have to follow them. This would not be an infringement of our First Amendment.
Can you explain how the government would hurt small businesses?
Well, when the government puts more and more regulations on social media, small businesses use social media to help market. They would have to change the way they market, and complying with these new regulations would cause less upstarts, as previously proved. And without new upstarts, there would be less investment.
How do you know that the government would change how social media works, not just regulate for things that they have to remove?
Any new regulations would automatically change how social media works, and these new regulations would negatively impact small businesses.
So how do you know social media companies aren't already hurting small businesses now? If they remove a ad or product, you can't see it anymore, which means you can't figure it out. So how would you know that they aren't doing it now?
Social media is not hurting small businesses right now, and like you said, they're actually not removing any advertisements or products that fit well into their guidelines when they first signed up. Every time there's a change,
there's going to be a new market, there's going to be a new way to market, and these companies would have to adapt to the new regulation, and that would negatively impact them.
You say that the government doesn't have the proper technology, but social media was only fully developed in the last 30 years. How do you know we can't do that in the less amount of time?
Well, in a less amount of time, that means right now the government is not set up with the proper technology. As of now, if we were to give the government the power to regulate, they would still be learning. While social media companies, as you said, for the past 30 years have been working on this, they are experienced and they have many people, unlike the government, to help start regulating.
Thank you. Time is up. So it's time for refutation. And the first one to give a refutation speech will be Kevin. Kevin, the floor is yours.
My opponent states that the regulation of social media does less good than harm because it would infringe our First Amendment, the government doesn't have the proper technology, and it would hurt small companies. My opponent has claimed that the regulation of social media would infringe our First Amendment rights. The First Amendment states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech and of the press, or of the right to the people to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The government doesn't disobey anything in the First Amendment. Regulations can be a way to scan social media for law violations such as copyright, which can save someone from a lawsuit. Government officials have no reason to violate our First Amendment. However, social media companies do. Social media companies can restrict your access to many sites, thus taking away your ability to post opinions. This means that they don't have to deal with hateful comments about their website, which means that which will improve their public image. My opponent states that the government doesn't have the proper technology. The internet needs the use of a satellite. The government has hundreds of satellites. The UCUSA states that the US alone has 1,327 satellites. I see no reason why we can't tap into one and apply a filter to regulate social media. The government has hundreds, if not thousands, of scientists working on and creating new technology every day. These scientists created the first rocket that sent man to space 50 years ago. I see no reason why they can't make a simple software. If the government can send a man to the moon, then they have the proper technology to regulate social media. My opponent's final point is that the regulation of social media would harm small businesses. The government has no reason to harm small businesses. An article on Advocacy states that small businesses make up 44% of the US economic activity. If the government hurts small businesses, the US economic activity would drop. Furthermore, the government has no reason to hurt small businesses because there's no point in removing a post, product, or ad. Social media companies, however, could remove companies to give their partners an advantage. In conclusion, the regulation of social media would not infringe our First Amendment. The government has the proper technology, and it would not hurt small businesses. I have refuted all my opponent's claims, and I ask for a pro ballot.
Thank you very much. So it's time for Sahil to refute Kevin's case. Sahil, the floor is yours.
My opponent has declared that social media sites are showing kids inappropriate things, endangering our privacy and info, and allowing for misinformation to spread. I will now refute all these claims. My opponent has first stated that social media should be regulated because kids are being shown inappropriate content. However, even if the government was to regulate social media, they would be unable to effectively stop the spread of inappropriate content. As previously expounded by Rakesh Kumar, the government does not have the technological wherewithal to detect and remove objectionable social media content at the requisite scale or speed. It is clear the government cannot possibly do a better job at catching and taking down inappropriate content. According to YouTube, YouTube releases a transparency report, which gives data on its removals of inappropriate content. And according to the Mashable business page, Instagram is taking new steps to limit the content it deems inappropriate. Furthermore, social media companies are more than capable of regulating themselves, and giving the government the power to regulate them would create complete chaos. My opponent further states that social media regulations will help prevent data and info from being seen by robbers and thieves. Nevertheless, the scale in which these robberies and crimes have been linked to social media is very low. Having the government regulate social media would not make a difference, as posts on people's identity and personal information are not necessarily illegal and do not fall into the jurisdiction of the government. Last year, the Supreme Court ruling on Packenham versus North Carolina says that social media platforms are the new public square and access to them is protected by the First Amendment. Government regulations disregard everyone's right to freedom of speech and will only help prevent a minimal amount of crime. For this reason, we should be really prioritizing freedom of speech. Finally, my opponent states that government regulations will help stop the spread of misinformation. However, the government is not even set up with the proper technology. As previously stated, the government does not have the technological wherewithal to detect and remove objectionable social media content at the requisite scale or speed. Social media, on the other hand, has plenty of people to help regulate themselves. According to a graph made by Statista, Facebook employs more and more people every single year to combat the growing internet users. The government does not have this same expanding graph, and therefore that obstructs their power to effectively regulate social media. If we give the government the power to regulate social media, they will not be able to do a good job at catching this information, and that in effect will allow for more misleading content to roll through. If we allow the government to regulate social media with inadequate technology, this will create complete anarchy. Having the government regulate social media will allow them to limit our freedoms of speech. And finally, giving the government the power to regulate social media when social media companies can clearly do a better job themselves, that is a bad idea. I have just refuted all my opponent's claims, and I urge you to vote for the concept.
Thank you, Sahil. So it is time to close this debate, and the first one to close it with his closing speech is Kevin. Kevin, the floor is yours.
Dear judges and audience, I have won this debate. You have heard our arguments about how the regulation of social media would infringe our First Amendment and how the government doesn't have the proper technology. I have won the first clash because my opponent brought this up as a hypothetical event. My opponent has failed to prove that the government would infringe our First Amendment. I, however, have proved that social media sites can and will infringe our First Amendment if it benefits them. The only examples of governments regulating social media and taking away the freedom of speech, like China, are communist or dictatorial governments. I have won the second clash because my opponent has failed to show how the government has insignificant technology. Social media regulations were made by scientists, and I see no reason why scientists who are recognized and hired by the government can't do the same. The world my opponent is supporting is a world of lies, a world where, as we grow more and more attached to social media companies control more and more of our lives. They would control what was seen as good or bad, what was right or wrong, and what was fact or fiction. This world would be a dictatorship, not by the government, but by the companies who regulate social media. The world I offer is a world where social media is safer, a world where people could speak their mind and face no violence. If this is the world you want, I ask for a pro ballot.
Thank you, Kevin. So let us hear the closing speech given by Sahil.
Dear respected judge and audience, it is now time for me to emphasize as to why I have won this debate. The first clash that I clearly won was on how allowing the government to regulate social media would infringe upon our First Amendment rights. And the second clash that I've clearly won is how the government is not set up with the proper technology to start regulating social media. I have clearly won the first clash because of how I proved social media regulation would violate our freedom of speech. Once again, according to the Cato Institute, there are few remedies that are actually compatible with our Constitution. Furthermore, allowing the government to regulate social media would be suppressing our natural-born right in the United States and would be in complete violation of your First Amendment. I have secured the second clash because of how I proved that the government is not set up with the proper technology to start regulating social media. Once again, according to the ORS, the government does not have the technological wherewithal to detect and remove objectionable social media content at the requisite scale or speed. Therefore, allowing the government to regulate social media without the proper technology would allow more and more unchecked content to roll through. Furthermore, I would like you to imagine a world with limitations on our rights and a world in which social media is no longer the organized platform it is today. That is exactly what will happen when we give the government the power to regulate social media. If we want to continue living our lives with basic freedoms and rights, as well as living a peaceful life, we should not allow the government to regulate social media. Continuing to uphold our basic freedoms is something that is extremely important, and I compulsivize you to vote for the con side.
Thank you, Sahil, and thank you, dear audience, for being so attentive. So, I would like to thank both of the debaters for great debate, and I'm sure that the audience enjoyed as well as Josh and I did. But this time we're moving to next debate where our instructor Josh will present on behalf of Alex Wu. So, we're about to hear a debate between Leah Schmidt and Josh Brad debating on behalf of Alex Wu. So, dear debaters, your debate may start. The first one to present will be Leah. Leah is advocating for the pro side. The floor is yours.
Steve Jobs once said, quality is more important than quantity. One home run is much better than two doubles. Social media is filled with a large quantity of information, but not all of it is quality information. I strongly believe that the government needs to regulate social media companies for the following reasons. It will protect children from dangerous information on the internet, prevent suicides, and protect our privacy. This brings me to my first point, which is protecting children from dangerous information on social media. Part of the parent's responsibility today is to monitor what their child does or watches on the device. This includes adding app restrictions and monitoring the kid so that they cannot access a browser and windows that could potentially include harmful information. Somehow, this is not enough to completely stop young children from having access to social media. When young kids have access to these platforms, they can easily be exposed to online information that promotes hate, violence, and pornography. In addition, they might get invited to register for prizes where they are to provide their personal information to an unknown and, most importantly, to an unsafe source. If the government were to regulate some of these apps and platforms, it would be better for many, many kids. Another point is that government regulations can protect people from committing suicide. There are many platforms out there that are for people with intentions of killing themselves. And many times they will form a suicide pact, which encourages each other to end their life. These types of groups are found on social media platforms. The most common one is Facebook. The Facebook organization is well aware of this and has spoken out by saying that they are looking at any suspicious activities such as suicide groups, and they're closely monitoring it. Unfortunately, they are failing. According to Business Insider, many participants of these Facebook groups use code words so that Facebook doesn't ban them. Due to the above statement, it is shown that social media companies are not doing enough to stop this, which goes to show that a government-hired investigator and additional regulations will help reduce the number of these Facebook groups with the positive outcome of saving lives. Lastly, government regulation on social media apps will not only help children and those with suicidal thoughts, but it will also help us. Although some may think that regulating social media companies will diminish our freedom of speech, it will actually be protecting us and our privacy because most of us aren't able to do it ourselves. An example of this is our privacy on social media platforms. For instance, this statement from TikTok's privacy policy regarding the information in which they share. Quote, we are committed to maintaining your trust. And while TikTok does not sell personal information to third parties, we want you to know that when and with whom we may collect this information, we collect it for business purposes. This means that if you have the TikTok, the app can share your personal information to other businesses without your notion for free. Other social media apps such as Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube have very similar privacy policies. The code I just read can easily be accessed through the social media app. But the vast majority of people, myself included, don't read the privacy policy. This goes to show how we cannot necessarily protect ourselves. With the proper government regulations, we can be sure that our personal information is safe. Dear audience, we may not be surgeons or actually saving people from burning buildings, but we can still be heroes. We can save lives. I urge you to vote in the affirmation of this bill to protect kids, save lives, and so that we can use social media safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. So it's time for Josh to question your opening case. Josh, will you be timing your cross-examination?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
All right. My first question is, social media companies likely have a strong incentive to prevent suicides from happening on their platform because it is bad for their business. Considering that both the government and social media wants to do this, why is the government a better actor?
Well, with the government help, there is going to be a time frame in which these number of suicides can diminish. So far, social media is taking action, but they're not doing it fast enough. Like I said, the Facebook codes, they are decoding these codes and translating them, but not fast enough because people keep committing suicide based on Facebook groups using these codes. And with government help, this can be a lot quicker and it will be better.
Okay, thank you. Your third argument says that even though users agree to privacy policies, that the data collection can be wrong. Would you suggest that the government should eliminate the data collection?
Can you specify by what you mean by data collection?
Yes, what the social media companies are doing with this data and selling it to businesses, should this not be allowed?
Well, they're not selling it, they are giving it for free, which in my opinion makes it even worse. For example, just yesterday, I was scrolling through TikTok and I liked this TikTok of a dog in a pool. Not even 10 minutes later, I got a notification from the Wish app advertising the same pool to me. This shows that TikTok clearly sent that information to the Wish app, and I think that is very wrong. Not in that case, but in other cases, it can be very, very, very disruptive of our privacy.
That is very scary, but I hope that the government does not end all of social media's business platforms. And that is time. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you very much. Josh, it's your time to present an opening speech written by Alex Wu.
Yes, okay. Since its inception, social media has greatly improved our world by connecting us in a way that it has never done before. While some issues do exist on social media, government regulation is not and never will be the solution for three reasons. First, because it will infringe on our human rights. Second, it will silence protests. And third, it will lead to manipulation. Our first claim is that government regulation will hurt human rights because in America, we are a country that has always cherished the freedom of expression and speech, and we cannot allow a limited number of online platforms to handpick the speech that Americans may access and use on the internet. This practice is fundamentally un-American and anti-democratic. Michael Chertoff, former US Secretary of Homeland Security and co-author of the Internet Governance Report, writes that, quote, free expression is one of the most foundational elements of the internet, and that it shouldn't be protecting the political interests of the ruling party or something of that sort. Government regulations are a threat to the foundation of democracy, and banning hate speech that does not incite violence will turn our tolerant democratic society into a world where all types of speech would be labeled as hate speech or fake news. Our second claim is that government regulations will silence protesting. The rising usage of social media in many nations has led to the emergence of citizens organizing protests through social media, sometimes called Twitter revolutions. The most notable of these social media-led protests were the Arab Spring uprisings starting in 2010. In response to the use of social media in these protests, the Tunisian government began to hack Tunisian citizens' Facebook accounts, and reports arose of accounts being deleted. In 2013, Harvard political science professor Gary King led a study to determine what caused social media posts to be censored and found that posts mentioning the government were not more or less likely to be deleted if they were supportive or critical of the government. However, posts mentioning collective actions were more likely to be deleted than those that had not been mentioned in collective action, meaning that there is a possibility if we give the government power to regulate, they will decrease the amount of protests that we are able to hold, fundamentally undermining our democracy. This means that social media censorship appears primarily as a way to restrict internet users' ability to organize protests. Our third claim is that government regulation leads to manipulation. Because with censorship, the government will hide the truth from its citizens. John Milton famously urged in his book, Areopagita, that if the truth and falsity fight it out in the marketplace of ideas, human rationality will most likely choose truth. Regulating what can enter the marketplace could impair or destroy this process, keeping the truth from public awareness. The impact of this is online content manipulation has contributed to a 7th consecutive overall decline in internet freedom, along with a rise of disruptions to mobile internet services and an increase in physical and technical attacks on human rights defenders and independent media. In all, government manipulation is a way to undermine democracy in the United States. Dear judge and audience, if you believe that human rights, democratic protests, and a life free from government tyranny is important, then I would strongly recommend a ballot for the negation.
Thank you, Josh. So it's time for Leah to question his case. Go, Leah.
I ask you, do you have social media?
Yes, I do have social media.
What was the last thing that you posted?
It was probably a picture of me and my friends at school.
Now, would you say that if government regulation on social media companies, would you say that that post would be considered hate speech?
Most likely no.
So when you said that every statement, when you stated that all types of speech will be turned into hate speech, this would happen if government regulated social media. How about those exceptions?
While I would agree that there are exceptions, I think there's always a risk in consolidating the power from many social media companies to just one entity like the government.
So that makes your statement false, correct?
Maybe the part where I said all hate speech, all speech considered hate speech was an over exaggeration. However, I do believe there is a risk of the government choosing speech that is controversial and not violent and labeling it as hate speech.
Thank you. In your speech, you also said that we can't give the government all the power. Do you agree with that, or can you summarize what you meant by that?
Yes, I do not think that taking the power from many different companies that want to promote free speech and bringing it to just one actor like the government is a good idea, because even if we don't see any issues right now with that, in the future there's always a possibility of somebody being elected that could use this power in an incorrect way.
Thank you. Now, do you think that if government regulation on social media would be a violation of our privacy?
I think government regulation of our social media could violate our privacy.
But that is already happening, such as a few months ago, the College Board made fake Twitter accounts to track students into cheating. I think that is a huge violation of our privacy, and with government regulation, this would go away.
If College Board is a part of the government, however, social media companies and governments would have trouble regulating anonymous accounts either way.
Thank you. Time is up. So I would like to invite you to give your refutation speeches, starting with Leah.
While my opponent has claimed that government regulation will invade human rights, silence protesters, and lead to government manipulation, I negate them all for the following reasons. For starters, the claim that government regulation will invade human rights would not happen because it goes against our constitution, which brings us to the topic of nullification. In this case, nullification wouldn't happen because according to the US Embassy, a nullification bill would need to be passed. And that is not what we are voting for today. Furthermore, if the United States government were to breach the rules altogether and annihilate the process of going through the nullification, the American people have the power to stop it. According to one source, according to lawfare, the American people can take action. One of the ways that this can happen is by getting all of the state governors involved. In my opponent's reasoning for this claim, it was said that, quote, we cannot allow online platforms to handpick the speech that Americans may access on the internet. And this is exactly what my side is advocating for. Private social media companies should not have all of the control in regards to our information and safety. The opposing side has also argued that government regulation on social media will silence protesters, with the reasoning that other nations have silenced protesters through social media because they did not agree with what they were saying. I strongly disagree with this claim because we cannot predict what the United States is going to do based on other countries, for example, like China. Just because China and the United States have different governments. For instance, China's government only has one party, which facilitates for the affirmation and negation of bills and laws, while the United States has more than one, making the process longer and harder. Lastly, the claim that social media government regulation will lead to manipulation. It is an exaggerated statement that won't happen. Here's why. Government social media regulation will not lead to manipulation as our government is not a dictatorship. People aren't going to make decisions without going through a movement that involves an intricate amount of voting and assessing. According to state.gov, the main elements that keep corruption from happening are human rights and democracy, two components that the US excels in. Dear audience and judge, after refuting my opponent's claim, I hope that you take into consideration that my values are in the best interest of the American people. Thank you for listening, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you, Leah. Josh, you may present your refutation speech.
Respected judge and audience, my opponent has claimed that the government regulating social media will help protect children from dangerous content, prevent suicide, or prevent and protect people from suicide, and protect our privacy. I will refute them all, starting with the first one. My opponent claims that government regulation on social media will protect children from dangerous content. However, the amount of dangerous content of the internet has already been reduced by social media platforms. Senior editor for social media platforms, Carissa Bell, states that content that's deemed low quality is also non-recommendable and will not appear in the explore or hashtag pages. Note that this sounds very similar to supposed shadow bans IG creators have been talking about for a long time. This is important because it shows that social media platforms are already taking steps to regulate their own platforms, like Instagram in this case. This also shows how social media platforms are already taking the steps to monitor their platform, and allowing the government to regulate now wouldn't make much sense because social media platforms are far more equipped and already have an incentive to, so changing now would just complicate things. My opponent's second claim is that allowing the government to regulate social media, it would prevent and protect people from being suicidal. Although the government will try to prevent anything and everything that has to do with suicide, there are still many loopholes and other ways that people can talk about it. For example, people can talk about suicide using code words or other signals. According to an article on CBS in 2012, on social media, teens are using code names for mental health disorders like Annie for anxiety and Sue for suicidal. However, social media platforms have already taken notice and they have started to take action by working with suicide prevention hotlines Facebook has developed a supportive community tools. Twitter has also made a report section on suicide or self-harm. There is no evidence that the government will be able to do this better than these social media platforms, especially considering they already have a vested interest in preventing it. My opponent's last and final claim is that giving the government power to regulate social media platforms will protect users' privacy. Recently, the White House held a press conference to examine allegations of bias and censorship. EPIC objected to an earlier White House survey on this topic, noting that the White House failed to protect the privacy of respondents. EPIC has also told the White House that this data collection is unlawful, unconstitutional, and itself is a violation of our First Amendment. Social media platforms have taken notice and have started to work on solutions. Facebook made simplification and expansion of its privacy controls. Respected judge, I've refuted all of my opponent's arguments, and I have pointed out why my values are more important in this debate, and that is why I asked for a negation ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So it's time to close this debate, and the first one to close it with a closing speech will be Leah. Leah, the floor is yours.
Dear voters, so far in this debate, we have had three clashes, such as our rights, kids having access to harmful information on social media, and suicide. I win the first clash, providing that government regulation on social media apps will not be a violation to our rights. In fact, it will even prevent that. Research has shown that social media platforms themselves have violated our privacy in the past and continue to do so on a daily basis. With government regulation, this wouldn't happen. In addition, my opponent has also said that social media companies have made it harder for kids to access inappropriate information on social media, reducing the number of kids being exposed to dangerous information, and therefore the government shouldn't be involved. This seemed like a silly argument to me because so what if it has been reduced? It hasn't stopped. Many kids are still being exposed to dangerous information every minute. This is not okay. My opponent has also stated that social media companies are devoted to the suicide groups and have interfered, which is why the government shouldn't regulate these companies. I have proven this statement to be false. Here is why. Like I said in my opening speech, Facebook and other social media companies have taken action in regards to suicide groups and code words hinting self-harm and suicide. So far, these companies have only decoded a few words, such as Deb or Dan, which means depression, and Cat or Sam, which means self-harm. The problem is that social media companies only know a handful of these codes, while there are hundreds of self-harm and suicide codes out there. With the help of the government, these codes can be quickly translated and kept under control as more and more continue to appear. Dear Judge, I am winning this debate as my values are in the best interest of the American people, and because my side is safer and more protective of our information. Voters, we are facing many challenges in regards to social media companies not doing enough for our safety. I ask you to imagine some of the points that I talked about today. As we go to sleep, the ongoing threat of social media doesn't stop. It doesn't end. It doesn't sleep. Lives continue to be taken. Children continue to be in danger, and our privacy continues to be leaked. Today, we have an opportunity to greatly diminish these challenges, and with your help, with your vote, we will meet them.
Thank you, Leah. So it's time for Josh to close this debate with his closing speech. The floor is yours.
Dear Judge, let us remind you once again why we win this debate on the key points of clash. This debate has been about allowing for democracy, the possibilities of harmful content on social media affecting kids, and our rights to freedom of speech. We win our first point of clash on protecting the marketplace of ideas and allowing for democracy to flourish. Putting government limitations on this platform would be disastrous. Remember our militant evidence that says that truth and falsity need to fight it out in the marketplace of ideas, and human rationality will likely choose the truth. By allowing the government to choose what makes it into the marketplace in the first place, we never get to have these discussions, and we cannot allow this to happen because it will undermine our democracy. We win the second point of clash, which is dangerous content, especially for kids, because we have proved that social media companies are already resolving these issues. Social media is relatively new and it has flourished, and some issues have arose. This doesn't mean, however, that we hand the reins to the government, because whenever we have slight issues in our daily lives, we do not just delegate it to the government. Social media companies are not okay with these issues either, and they are far more equipped to work with solving their own issues on their platform than the government is. We win our third and final point of clash about our right to freedom of speech, because we have proved that the government cannot be trusted with the great power of what should or should not be regulated. We have seen this empirically. This has backfired on other countries that have thought that it is a good idea. While we may be different from these countries, the more that we act like them, the more we become them. Which is why would we want to consolidate who decides what is legal speech and what isn't into one entity like the government? It is just not a good idea. That is why overall we say that social media has greatly improved our world and it has connected us in ways that we never could have imagined. And while we do admit that there are some issues on social media, we do not believe that they are strong enough to risk tyranny of the government and undermine our democracy. Remember that it will never be the solution for government regulation, because it will infringe on our rights as humans, it will silence protests, and it will lead to manipulation. And for these reasons, we strongly urge a negation ballot.
Thank you. So this was our final debate, and we really enjoyed that one. So I would like to invite all of our students to join the panel. Arsh, Allison, Juhi, Kevin, Leah, Liam, Sahil. So once again, yes, and I didn't join. Yep.
Oh, yeah, everybody.
Yes, now we're all here. So once again, dear students, thank you for making this session so memorable. And dear parents, once again, thank you for trusting us with your children. Please don't forget to fill out the survey that we shared with you, because your feedback is actually our improvement. Thank you once again. Josh, would you like to add something?
Yes, I hope that I see all of you sometime in the future, continuing your debate careers. It's always awesome to see students after they've graduated, I guess, the class, to see them at a whole nother level. It's just amazing to see. And it's been a really awesome 2 weeks with some of you, and even 1 week with the rest of you. I'm so glad that I got to meet everybody. So thank you for that.
Thank you once again. And dear parents, don't forget to contact us if you have any suggestions or questions regarding your children. By the end of this week, you will receive the report cards, individual report cards of their improvement. Thank you.